everybody, how's it going? I am here with Chef Davis from Brew Food VA. We're in a little bit of a different location than usual. We're outside of an event for catering at Fairwind Brewing Company.
Absolutely.
Everybody seems to be having an awesome time. The food is doing over extremely well, and seems like a great event catering a holiday party here at Fairwind. I've been wanting to talk to you since I first saw you on Instagram, is where I first saw it. Everybody posts pictures of the food.
I appreciate that.
Which tells me that you're doing a great job because you put the eyes first, right?
That's right.
And everybody's posting pictures whenever you are anywhere. I see people posting pictures of you, tagging you, hashtagging you, and I knew that I wanted to get a chance to talk to you. Saw you at Centrifuge.
Yes, sir.
And said, I don't care, the next time you're anywhere near me, I need to come and talk to you about where the concept of this came from and your journey to starting Brew Food VA and getting to where you are. So, first question, let's start with that. Like, how did you get here?
Well, that's it is a long story, but it's a fun story, and it's something that completely changed my life. Nothing that I thought I was ever going to be doing when I was a kid. I didn't set off to be a chef or own my own food company. But as they say, what happened was I joined the Army many years ago, about 20-something years ago, right before 9/11, and I just always wanted to be a doctor. I always wanted to be a soldier. I always wanted, there all these things that I inherited kind of from my dad. He was the consummate professional. He was a great guy. He was my hero, and I knew that whatever it was that he did for a living paid for my whole life, my house and all that. I didn't know what he did because that was sometimes classified, but I knew that I wanted to be just like him. So one of the exciting things about being in the military is you have all these different career paths, options that you can choose. And I graduated high school at 16, and I was too young to join the Army, obviously, and I was too young to take advantage of some of the scholarships that were coming my way. One in particular was medical school. So I was living in San Diego at the time, and I ended up taking another scholarship. UCSD put their scholarship on hold for me. So I went to live in Mexico for 2 years. I studied over there, learned the language, and just had a great time down there. And I also learned how to make Mexican food. So I'm still in my teens, but all that stuff was just in there since, all those years ago. And I get back to the States, I start medical school when I'm like 19, and then I ended up joining the Army, and 9/11 happened, and there was a lot of emphasis on what was called asymmetrical warfare. I actually went to UCSD medical school, and then joined the Army. The Army paid for me to finish medical school. And at that time, right on the heels of 9/11, anthrax was being sent in the mail, and there was a sarin gas bombing in Tokyo. So Congress was throwing a lot of money at cloud defense, chemical defense, and things along those lines, which was right up my alley, and I was always very interested in that sort of thing. So I ended up doing that for SAM for almost 10 years, and I ended up at DITRA, which was the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, for about 7 or 8 years, and then I got out of the military, and they picked me up as a government contractor doing my exact same job, but actually getting paid for it now, right? So after about 3 years there, the director retired, and from that time, I had actually gone from senior scientist, managing scientist, chief scientist, program director. The next step up was director, because there was no deputy director of that program. I got looked over a couple of times, which, it can hurt a brother's feelings, but I was kind of looking for something else to do because I realized I'm never going to be the best friend of the 2-star general who makes that decision. And, as unfortunate as that may sound, I had to face that reality. I could be here for another 10 years, and there's always going to be somebody with a better connection or whatever. And I love what I did, so it was heart-wrenching. But another person in that office retired. He was happened to be at the target and he said, "You know what, guys? Don't give change. I don't want to vent to you. Just everybody bring whatever they like to eat. It's kind of an impromptu. Remember, I grew up in San Diego, big in Mexico. I love to cook. Um, I brought Mexican tamales to the retirement, and my email exploded from that point on. People were like, email on my .gov email address, mind you, they're like, "Hey, are you the tamale guy from General Mills Retirement?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, I do make tamales. I'm the the director of the Kin Bio division, deputy director or whatever, but the program manager, but I do make tamales." And then it got to the point where I was like, you know what? Yes, I'm the tamale guy. What do you need? So I ended up making $300-400 a week just selling tamales to my friends and coworkers at this classified facility next to Fort Mill Park. So that was a very exciting time, and I was thinking to myself, I wonder if this might be that thing, you know? And long story short, some rando, like a friend of a friend who, took some tamales to a family reunion or something, I get this call. This guy says, "A friend of yours brought some tamales to an event that I was at. I work for Whole Foods, and my buyer is going to be in town in a couple of weeks. He's the best tamales I've ever had. Whole Foods doesn't have tamales in their stores on the East Coast. Why don't you come in and see what you can do with this?" So I brought some tamales in there, and mid-bite, the buyer was like, "So, can I get 1,000 of these for next week and give me like a couple of hundred of each of your salsas too?" I was like, "What?" What? I was like, I make these at my house, right?" So she was like, "That's okay. We have a mom and pop quality and insurance. We can bring a small business in, and it helps that you're better known, helps that you're minority owned, that whole thing. And basically, we can bankroll your first couple of deliveries. We'll pay you, next week. We'll pay you for whatever you bring in. And here's a list of commercial kitchens in the area. Here's a list of how, here's how you get your food handler's license and your kitchen manager's permit and all those things." It was just the best thing that ever happened to me at that point. I was like, this is what I'm going to do now. So it was so exciting. I just put my whole self into it. Made the tamales, made the salsas, took them to Whole Foods, they sold through, and they were like, "Okay, we're going to double our orders, we're going to put you in 3 stores." And I was like, wow. So I had a commercial kitchen by that time, and because they really did take care of it, And within 6 months, I was in 10 stores in the DMV, and then I ended up, about 3 or 4 months later, I was in 15 stores. They offered to put me in 50 stores. But during that time period, some of my customers have come into Whole Foods and seen my little demos. I'm giving out free tamales. "Hey, this is a new product here. Check it out." And they were saying, "You know what? This would work really well at farmers markets." So I ended up with 3 or 4 farmers markets in the Alexandria area, and doing that direct sale. Like, I love Whole Foods. I love Whole Foods. They took great care of me. They launched my business. Basically helped me find what I really wanted to do for the rest of my life. And they do happen to take a huge commission. So selling direct, I didn't have to lose any of that commission, and little by little, I eased my way out of Whole Foods. I grew more and more of my direct sales venues, and to the point where I pulled out of Whole Foods. I declined their offer to put me in 50 stores, which was, would have been a great thing, but now I've got 30 something of my own direct sales venues, and it's just much more lucrative this way. One of the more exciting things about my business model is growth. I was with Whole Foods for about 3 years, and just within the last couple of years, it's started having a contract with breweries to do spots. And I think it's what I have to offer the breweries and the customers that really makes a huge difference in the way that I do business compared to some of the other food options that are out there. But this was not something. If you'd have asked me when I was 15 or 25 or 35, I'm a 50-year-old man. And if you'd have asked me that any number of years ago, if I was going to be in the food service industry and enjoying it as much as I am, I would never have even thought that. So it's just been a wild ride, but if I had known it was going to be this much fun, I probably wouldn't have died.
We're going to become just a little bit stepping outside here. So that is an amazing story. And not at all what I was expecting.
No.
I was not expecting to go from a
medical degree,
hazardous chemical weapons.
I mean, yeah, I got
to spicy tamales.
Yeah.
That's the only connection.
Which is kind of a different form of hazardous chemical weapon, depending on your perspective.
If you don't have the gastrointestinal fortitude, it can turn into that quite quickly. So, what made you pick tamales that first time?
I mean, that is my all-time favorite food. I mean, when you're talking about something that's compact, it's got meat, it's got cornbread, it's got some spice to it, and the original tamale. In Mexico, the Aztecs, whenever they went to war, the warriors would pack whatever they could carry on their backs, basically, and they would go out and stay for extended periods of time, and they had to have food sources that would last the whole time they were away from home. So the original tamale was what's called pain de guerre in French. It means the bread of war. And if you take it all the way back to the old world, pain de guerre was a very protein-packed bread that had different types of sugars and proteins and starches. So it was basically, after they started trading with the Middle East, there were dates and figs and this high energy. Basically, they were exactly. So what's that word for those little bars people buy in stores with the muscle bar? Yes, yeah. So it was basically the original
protein bar.
We can edit that out. Right. So it was like the original protein bar, dates, figs, and then they would mix in some grains, and they would wrap it up in something, either cloth or some other type of material, and put it under the horses' saddles. Now, when the horses would run and sweat, that salt would actually help preserve that food. So it was probably not the tastiest thing in the world, but it got to where you were going, and it didn't spoil. They didn't use a lot of meat, or they used preserved meats, which again would be preserved with salt of some sort. So when you move over to Central America, they didn't have quite those same types of things available during that time, but they did have corn, and they had some meat, and they had corn husks. So they would basically just wrap up cornbread with pieces of meat and vegetables that were dried, and they'd wrap them in a corn husk to keep them from spoiling. And that's what the warriors would take with them. So that was like the original pan de guerre of Mexico. So just that history of it, I mean, having been a soldier, I just kind of fell in love with that whole idea. But even before that, I just love the taste of a Mexican tamale. I like unwrapping it. It's like each one is like a little gift. You unwrap it and you break it open, and it's either red or green inside, or it's filled with cheese or spices. It's just my favorite food to prepare and to eat.
Do you remember the first one that you had?
Oh, the first tamale I had, I was probably
coming through again.
The first tamale I had, I was probably 8 years old. That's when I kind of moved out to California and started taking Spanish classes and meeting people from all different cultures. Because before that, I was in basically a cultural desert. I was the only black person at my elementary school, and my sister was like 6 years older than me. So I never caught up to her. Like, oh, my sister's here too. So by the time I was done with elementary school, she was done with high school. So it just never really happened. So I was always, different, but I never felt different. I love people. I'm number 11 out of 12 kids. So most of my brothers and sisters are much older than I am. And there's a 5-year gap for some reason between my sister and me, and I have another brother. But every time I got to a new school in that area, I was, so from my preschool and then my elementary school, and by the time we moved out, moved from Denver, I was in California. So high school was just amazing. Even middle school for me was an amazing experience. I really appreciated that cultural diversity. I learned a lot from different types of people, and having grown up in such a large family, that was just I just felt like a connection story. And to this day, that's why I love what I do now. What I did in the military was very satisfying intellectually, but I was always in the lab. I do it by myself. Here, can you pan it down? Just so people see what's going on here.
See if it'll go all the way over there.
But here, I don't know how much you can see of what's going on inside, but there are people from all walks of life, all ages, all different nationalities, and there's a woman standing on a chair. There's a woman standing on a chair. All right. I was not expecting that, but there it is. And that's what I'm talking about. That would not have happened in my lab.
It might have, but it wouldn't have happened very long.
And that's what I love about what I do. I'm in a different place just about every night. I have staff, again, different ages, different races, different sexes, and it's all love all the time. And that's what I grew up with in a family of 12 kids. So I try to reproduce that to the best of my ability. When I create something, I create something that I like to eat, something I like to prepare for my whole family. I use the best ingredients. I source locally when I can. Everything's fresh, never frozen, doesn't come out of a can. And that's how I show my love to people who basically allow me to live the kind of life that I live by patronizing my breweries. And I get back to breweries, try to make things as easy for them to do this with me as I can, and it's rewarding. And the same for my staff. I don't have a $100,000 food truck that I have to carry around with me, so I'm very agile. I can be in a lot of different places at a time with my staff and provide a lot of different offerings at the same time. And I think that's what really sets me apart from some of the traditional food service mechanisms that have been in place in breweries for many years.
So you've kind of exploded over the last 3 years, and especially over the last year.
The last year has been ridiculous.
There's been a ton of growth. I remember when I first saw you to when now, you're all over the place. What would you say has been the key to you sort of growing so much over the last year?
Well, I think what I just said is a huge part of it. I love what I do, and I love people. And for me, if you do good business and have good relationships with people, whether it's your customer, whether it's your client, like there's 120 people here from a company that one person worked at who came to this brewery, Fairwinds in Lorton, liked what they saw, talked to their boss, and 6 weeks later, there's 120 of their dear friends, co-workers, their spouses that are here enjoying something I was able to provide in a venue that was able to provide the space. And just because of the experience they had. Now, the most interesting part of that is I personally was not here that night. They talked to one of my employees and got my information. And I think that really is the difference, the customer service, the true appreciation and the recognition that we couldn't do any of this if it weren't for all of us working together. I wouldn't have a place to do business if these breweries didn't allow me to do my thing under their roof. Customers wouldn't have a place to have good food, good times, good beer, if it weren't for, the fact that this brewery is here. So I wouldn't be as well represented by my staff if they weren't truly good people and understood my vision and had their own personal convictions about how you're supposed to treat people. So it's just, when all those things are working together so well, the financial aspect of it, honestly, Mark, takes care of itself. Yeah. That's really the last thing that I think about. When I get reports from my employees, I want to know, who they got a chance to talk to, what was the vibe like in a new place. I've sent my employees to places I haven't even worked at. So, I trust that they know what I look for. They know what I appreciate in the place. It's super important to me how they're treated by the customers and by the brewery staff when they get there. That's super important to me. And again, it's just very exciting to me to see that so many different people from so many diverse walks of life, brewers, college kids. I have
CEOs.
That's right, CEOs, and some of my employees. I mean, they're grandparents. They're grandparents, and they tell me about their grandkids, and this is something they're doing, supplement their Social Security, and it's just amazing, and it's something I really haven't seen done
to this level in any other food service industry. It's not about the status quo. It's about good people who understand that they're in a culturally diverse environment, and the only thing that sets us apart, I think, from whatever I would consider competition, is the way we treat people.
So you've obviously had a pretty awesome 2018.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you're rolling into the holiday season. We're going to be going into 2019. Where do you want to take Brew Food VA in 2019?
Worldwide. No, honestly, we are looking to expand into Baltimore, Richmond, and Philly specifically. But a young lady came into the brewery the other night. I did happen to be here, and she liked what she saw. She saw a table indoors. We've been having trouble getting regular food service in our breweries up in Loudoun County. I had expanded into Loudoun County a little bit, but it just wasn't logistically feasible. Now, however, I am coming into a commercial kitchen up in Gainesville, where I'll be coming the other way. And I've already talked to a couple of those breweries. I'm kind of in reclamation mode where, hey, remember we didn't work out last time? But again, it's about those relationships, and they're open to it as long as it makes sense for everybody.
And you're part of this friend.
Exactly. And I understood, you know what, I can't really fulfill my obligation to you to be there at X, because so many things can happen with rush hour traffic and airport traffic, and this isn't really working out for either one of us. So let's revisit this at some point in the future. And again, that's the relationship that allows that to happen. And I'm very excited about that. So I just started off at a new brewery called Tin Cannon last week. And right over the hill here, right on the other side of those train tracks, is Forge. And I had one of my employees. I personally have still never worked at Forge, but I did secure that relationship and sent one of my best employees over there. And she had a great night over there. I had a great night at Tin Cannon. We launched 2 new breweries in one night, and that's kind of been the story of my life for the last 6 weeks. We brought in a tremendous number of not only new breweries, but then the people that go there, they follow us on Instagram, and it's been explosive growth. Very exciting.
That's awesome. I would encourage anybody who's in Loudoun County who's just hearing that to make sure you get out there, follow them on Instagram, get them on Facebook, follow the website and everything. Make sure that you check out where Brew Food VA is going. I can test that the food is amazing.
Thank you.
And everyone's enjoying.
For the brewery owners out there, local trail, I'm coming your way. My goal by the end of 2019 is to have served food at least once on every brewery on the local ale trail. Very exciting, and it's just so many great beers come out of Loudoun County right now. A lot of people think Loudoun County and Pub Grub County, they think of their wines, but take a step back, look at the beers. It'll be worth your while, definitely.
So brewery owners, if you haven't had them yet, with them, I can attest there's 120 people here having a great time enjoying his food, and I'm sure he'd love to do the same thing at your breweries. So get with Chef Davis at Brew Food VA and bring him into your brewery, and he's going to show all your customers a great time, and they're going to experience some great food and great time, great hospitality. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you, Mark.
I was very, very excited to talk to you.
Me too.
I met you and couldn't wait to set this up and talk to you, how you got here and learn about your experience, and now I'm even more excited having learned how you got to where you are. So thank you so much.
Thanks for braving this bitter cold.
A little bit on the chilly side.
And normally we would have been inside, but there are laws in place, and this happened to be a private event. But they're having a great time in there. Take my word for it. And we just didn't get any permission from them to film them with their families and all that stuff. But it's a great time. Has been had by all, myself included. I very much enjoyed talking with you guys. Definitely check him out. Follow him on Instagram. Not just for the incredible pictures of food. You'll be crazy hungry. Thank you so much. And I'll see you later.